Castlevania, probably Konami's most well-known video game series aside from Bomberman and Metal Gear. If you know your old-school video games well enough, you've probably at least heard of this series. Though for the longest time, I personally never even heard of this series until my friend Will mentioned it during a few conversations we had in 2012. After getting into the Mega Man series, I decided that I would try and play as many iconic video game franchises as possible to see just how many great video game series my younger self missed out on for the longest time. And one of the first non-Nintendo owned video game series that I would look into was Castlevania. Though ironically, the series didn't interest me that much at first. Back in late 2012, I've decided to watch Some Call Me Johnny's Month of Castlevania on YouTube to learn more about the series. And it turns out that the original Castlevania games are known to be some of the hardest video games ever created. As a result, I pretty much accepted that I wouldn't get into the series because of their annoying difficulty. I did still try out the original Castlevania trilogy, as well as Super Castlevania 4 and even Castlevania Chronicles, which ended up being the first Castlevania game I've ever finished, but I still wasn't sold on the series entirely. However, in January 2013, I've watched Some Call Me Johnny's review of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which then prompted me to try the game out myself. And when I did, I was blown away. I loved just about everything about it, the graphics, the music, the gameplay, etc. Symphony of the Night ended up becoming not only my favorite Castlevania game, but also my favorite Metroidvania game. It's easily one of my favorite games on the original PlayStation/Sega Saturn, and I still love playing it even today. However, after finishing Symphony of the Night, I've decided that I wanted to finish at least one of the classic 8-bit Castlevania games. I've decided to try finishing the very first Castlevania game and... well, I'll save my thoughts on that for the actual review. The story of Castlevania is very simple. The main character is named Simon Belmont, a vampire hunter of the legendary Belmont clan, destined to destroy the evil Count Dracula, along with his vile creatures of the night and even his castle, known as Castlevania. And that's about it. Castlevania is a 2D action platformer in which you control Simon Belmont through a total of 6 stages, as you use the famous whip known as the Vampire Killer and other sub-weapons to defeat monsters and other creatures throughout the castle. At the end of every stage, you need to defeat a boss and grab a glowing orb in order to clear the stage. Besides the Vampire Killer, Simon can also use one of a total of 5 sub-weapons. The dagger, which Simon simply throws straight across the room, the axe, which Simon throws at an arc and can be useful for aerial threats, the Holy Cross, also known as the boomerang, which Simon throws across the room and comes right back to him, the Holy Water, also known as the Firebomb, which can incapacitate enemies for a short period of time while also causing damage, and the Stopwatch, which allows Simon to stop time and freeze everything around him except for most boss fights. In every stage are a bunch of candles that Simon can break to find items that can destroy every enemy on screen, make Simon invincible for a short time, grant extra points, a new sub-weapon, an upgrade for the Vampire Killer, or hearts which act as your ammo for sub-weapons. And no, the hearts don't restore health, as misleading as that is. The only way Simon can restore health is by breaking certain blocks or walls and finding some meat inside, which can restore health. And believe me, you're definitely going to need that meat in almost every stage you play. In fact, your first playthrough of the game is most likely going to be this. It's no secret. Castlevania is known for being one of the hardest video games ever made. I don't think it's the hardest, but it certainly ranks high up there. The first 3 stages don't give me too much trouble, but the 4th stage is where I start getting very frustrated. The bosses in Stage 4 and Stage 5 pretty much require going through the stage without dying if you want a good chance at beating them, since they hit hard and can be pretty hard to dodge. If Simon dies, he loses his sub-weapon as well as almost all of the hearts collected, and some sub-weapons can only be collected in an area before a checkpoint, and if that wasn't bad enough, the control is very stiff. Simon doesn't move very fast, and there are some enemies that move way faster than he can. Plus, taking damage causes him to be knocked back unless he's on stairs for some reason. And worst of all, he can't change his direction while jumping. Not only that, but he has no way of jumping on or off stairs. The control is the main reason why the original Castlevania is so damn hard, and that's my main issue with the game. Now, while I do think the game is frustratingly hard, There are a lot of things I love about the game. For example, I think it's very satisfying to defeat enemies with the vampire killer or other sub-weapons, and it's even more satisfying when you defeat a boss. I especially love hearing the victory jingle when you grab the orb. Graphically speaking, it looks pretty decent for an NES game. Not the best, but certainly good for the time. As for the music, it's awesome. Castlevania has one of the best soundtracks of any NES game, and I love almost every song in the game, with my favorite song being Vampire Killer. An obvious choice, I know, but I don't care, it's so good! Overall, I think the first Castlevania game is alright. The game is fun, but it's not a game I like to replay often. While I really like the core gameplay and music, the control keeps me from enjoying it as much as later games in the series. Now don't get me wrong, I can understand that this game is loved by many video game fans and can see why the game is considered a classic. But for me, I personally think there are better classic Castlevania games out there. And hey, if you're looking for a really hard game with a fantastic soundtrack and satisfying gameplay, consider giving the original Castlevania a shot. I won't blame you if you can't finish it, but who knows, maybe you're better at the game than I am. With that being said, I give this game a 6 out of 10.